Hi, and welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast, Special Edition. Your dream is to become a mom. My dream is to help you get there. I'm Rebecca Greenspan, a single mom through domestic adoption and an adoption consultant for over a decade. I'll be your guide, along with other adoption professionals and members of the adoption constellation, walking you step by step down this beautiful and complex path of adopting your baby. When I was going through the adoption process, I had no idea what I was doing, what I needed to know, or more importantly, who to trust. Well, after helping hundreds and hundreds of families grow through the beauty and complexity of adoption, I've learned more than a thing or two, and let me tell you, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. This isn't just another podcast sharing adoption stories, but it's for you if you're genuinely committed to diving in with an open heart, eager to learn everything there is to know about adopting a baby so that you can show up for yourself and your child in the best way possible. This podcast is for you if you're ready to put your newfound knowledge into action. Adoption isn't for the weak of heart, and it certainly isn't done when your baby gets placed in your arms. If that's what you think, I'm afraid you're living in La La Land. My promise to you is to keep it real if you promise to keep digging. We'll acknowledge the hard, and we'll also celebrate the joy that is adoption. You ready? Let's do this. I know it's not so exciting to always talk about money and adoption, but money is a huge factor in so many ways. People wonder why there's so much money associated with birth mother expenses or expectant mother expenses. And there's different laws in different states that dictate how much you can spend. Some have a max and you cannot go over it. Some have a max and you can go to court and petition for more. And usually it's granted. Some people will ask, well, why do I need to pay that? And I would retort back to you, that sounds like a very legal term. I'm not even sure if I used it right. But I would say back to you, well, don't you want to make sure that if this is your baby that this woman is carrying, that she is well taken care of, that she has food to eat, that she can make it to her doctor's appointment, that she has a place to live, that she has clothes to wear, and on and on and on. So of course you want to support your expectant mama. And knowing all along that even if you should support her financially, that is an agreement you are stepping into, knowing full well that she has every right to parent her child in the end. So keep that in mind. Welcome, Lindsay. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast today. I am going to just jump in with the first question because I'm guessing you didn't know anything about adoption when you started, did you?
Not a lot. I didn't know a lot about the process, but it is something I've always wanted to do. And I remember being in high school or college and seeing people have a post shared around on Facebook about them trying to adopt. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. So it was kind of always in the back of my mind. But yeah, I did not know near as much as I do now when we set out to start. And actually how I learned was just joining Facebook groups about adoption. And reading people's posts and the questions they were asking, and then reading all the different answers that they were getting. And honestly, that's where I send a lot of people who are newer to the process, because what are you out except some time, and you can learn so much. You don't even have to ask a question, because if you search, there's a good chance that someone's already asked it. And there's some that are more focused on self-matching, and there's some that are more generic for the process, and there's some that are by state. So there's really just so much information out there, and it's all just at your fingertips.
That is a great piece of advice and a nice little nugget to start with. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with someone whose heart and dedication have touched countless lives over the past 26 years. Laurie Shelton, an adoption specialist, has guided over 750 birth parents through some of the most important decisions of their lives. Laurie started her journey answering a newspaper ad as a pregnancy counselor, unaware that it would lead her to a fulfilling career in adoption.
Liz, I wanted to share with you a story that would add value to your entire audience. And
Fantastic.
So to me, the message here in this story was a big lesson for me. It was trusting the process and knowing that all is for the good or meant to be in adoption. Because so this was this particular story where an expectant mom, and this was during the open days, an expectant mom had been with an agency, picked a family, had built a very close bond. They had met, did a pre-birth visit. Everyone had spent a lot of time together. And she delivered. Everything was going great. She discharged the hospital after 24 hours. Family was there staying with the baby. And on the second night, the baby's feet turn blue. And baby gets air evac'd to the children's hospital because this wasn't a level 2 NICU hospital. And the adoptive family, or hopeful adoptive family, did not get on the helicopter with the baby. And that baby then was flown to the children's hospital. They got cold feet and kind of got nervous and got scared and didn't go. And when the next morning, I facilitate this entire situation, and we met back with the mom. We learned from the medical team what was going on. The baby ended up needing like open heart surgery. Mom still wanted to go through with her adoption plan, and it was too much for her to be a part of this and wanted me to then be there with this baby, so this baby wasn't alone. So I got to, this is why I just love I call it, it's not even a job. To me, this has like been a part of my life, but I was the one who stayed by that baby's side in the NICU until he was taken into surgery, and then stayed in the waiting room and put in the, not knowing what was going to happen. And she was able, the baby survived and did great. And, he's now probably, I think, like a teenager. But the point of the story is, at the time, I was like, I don't even want to know if it's angry or like disappointed or like didn't understand. I had so many emotions for myself. And again, like here I am to be the support person for everybody. And at the time, I was just like blown away by what's transpiring before my eyes. And this family, of course, had to do what was best for them. And thank God they walked away, because clearly they were not prepared and ready to be a parent through adoption from my point of view. And this mom got to choose a new family, which obviously is not anything that anyone wants to have to go through. Already going through this process is so difficult to make. But she went through profiles again. She picked an amazing family that was meant to be this baby's parents. And they showed up from another state as well. They got the Ronald McDonald House. They spent 6 weeks next to this baby's side. They gave up their entire life to be by their baby's side. We all went out to dinner. Everyone got to spend time together. Her mom came. I basically have the most incredible heart dish that they gave me. It's like a little jewelry box heart dish that sits on the mantle of my fireplace in my home, that I see every day, and I will never forget this case or this story. But what it taught me was that you trust this process, and like a higher power takes care of what's meant to be. Because unfortunately, this expectant mom, birth mom, had to go through already the trauma of everything that was happening. But thankfully, that family knew to walk away. And they needed obviously more education. I have no idea what happened with them. I had to go see them because they wanted to give, I don't even remember if they were giving a gift or giving back a gift or something, that I was like, at the time, I remember being like, oh my God, I didn't want to go see these people. I was like, why do I have to go do this right now? And I'm glad I did, because that moment also was really healing for, I think, all of us, like processing of what was happening, because you never know how you're going to respond or react in any of these situations. But at the same time, this baby, this situation could happen to anyone, biological situation or adoption. So I think it's just a matter of like asking yourself a lot of these hard, tough questions before you're in that spot or that situation. And so it's truly helped me in speaking with, educating, and getting a better feeling of what an adoptive family is going through as well. Because I've always spent my career on the side of an expectant mom. So I never really understood where adoptive parents were coming from. And that experience opened up so many different thoughts and feelings for me as well.
Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Damon Davis, a key voice in the adoption community and the creator of the poignant Who Am I Really podcast. On his podcast, Damon provides a platform for adoptees to share their diverse experiences, from challenging adoptions to heartwarming reunions, and has reached an impressive milestone with over 230 episodes spanning 14 seasons. Damon is not only a podcaster, but also an author and adoptive parent. In his autobiography, Who Am I Really? An adoptee memoir, he reveals his emotional journey through adoption, the joy of becoming a father to his son Seth, and the complexity of his relationships with both his adoptive and biological families.
If I could, Becca, I want to go back for a moment because you said something that sparked for me, and I just want to make sure that we sort of speak to the prospective adoptive families out there.
Yeah.
You astutely pointed out that people need to practice what they're going to say. And I think that's incredibly important because there are going to be multiple situations that you will need to have practiced what your position is, and you don't always have to have the answer. I want to encourage people to realize you might not have the answer in the moment, and you need to grant yourself space to get to an answer.
And it will change.
And it will change. And it's going to be things like your child is going to come to you and ask you about their adoption. You need to think ahead of time what your answer is about that. There's going to be a time when someone in public is going to ask about you and your child's adoption, and you should have a predetermined answer there because you want to be able to rattle it off relatively quickly with ease and comfort and feel confident and be able to quickly turn and acknowledge your child's feelings and comfort them and just see where they are based on what was happening. And if you read that they weren't really impacted, great. You don't need to make a big deal of it in the moment, but you should definitely take a moment to give them an eye and see how are they doing, and acknowledge too for yourself that situation might come up later. Yeah. What happens with kids is they don't have the language for their curiosity in the moment, and they don't necessarily feel empowered to speak up. But when they're sitting in the backseat of your car and their little legs are swinging and they're thinking about something as they look out the window, they will blurt out a question that you never saw coming. And so you should think through what your responses are going to be. And then finally, I think you should also think through what you're going to say when they eventually come to you and say, I think I want to search for my biological family members. Because while they may not say it to you out loud, they've probably thought about it. And what will happen is, as we all do, you get an idea. The first thing you do, you pull out your phone and you start Googling stuff, right? I wonder how many stars are in the sky. Let me go to Google. I wonder where my birth mom is. Let me go to Google, right? And so you need to think about the day when your child, your teenager, your adult child comes to you and says, hey, could I talk to you about this? Or, hey, I need my adoption record or whatever it is. And this is the part that I think you need to allow yourself to grant yourself some space, because it could be hard if you haven't prepared yourself. And you could just, it's okay to say to them, I thought you might ask about this one day. Do you mind? Can you give me a day to just think about this? And then I'll come back to you tomorrow, or give me an hour and I'll come back to you on this. It's okay to not necessarily feel okay in the moment, but I think you do have to acknowledge it and be part of it, because if you don't, adoptive parent, what will happen is that adoptee is going to go ahead without you, because they're doing it. If they've come to you and said it, they've thought about it enough that they're probably going to do it whether you are supportive or not. And I think it's better for you if you can find yourself in a place of being supportive, because what you will then have done if you're not supportive is sliced yourself out of a significant piece of your adopted child's life. So I'll pause right there, but I really want to encourage people to think about the hard stuff ahead of time. Yes. This is like, buying insurance. You never know when something's going to go wrong, but you'll be glad that you were prepared ahead of time.
So good. And one of the reasons why I say it changes is it depends on the age of your child too. So, and you also, when you're caught off guard, for instance, by other people, you have to decide, is this an educational moment? Is this I want to fuck with you a little bit moment and have some fun? Right. Or is this a moment where, okay, my child's old enough, my answer is really going to count. I remember my child's Mexican and I'm white. And I remember early on, I walked into a store and it was a Mexican store, and the guy behind the counter looked at me, looked at my son, looked at me and said, "Is your husband Mexican?" And I'm like, "No." Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of shrugged like, I don't know what happened here. Yeah. And he was
Good luck figuring that out, buddy, because I'm not giving you any other answers.
He was so perplexed, and I just walked out, and I just didn't feel like it. And there are other times where I do feel like it, and other times where, now that my son's old enough, I'll look to him and I'll be like, "How do you want me to answer this?"
Yeah. And that's a good point too. I'm glad you said that too,
Mm-hmm.
that there is a time in a child's life when they should have ownership and empowerment of their own story, right? A lot of times we post our children online and things like that, and we're sort of lauding what's happening in our lives. But for adoptive parents, that can be a little bit challenging, because you can accidentally turn the child into a trophy. And that's a hard I'm not saying don't post. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is be thoughtful about how and how much you talk about the adoption, because there are days when you just don't want to be adopted as a person, right? It's not that you don't want to. It's just like that's not the first thing on my mind. So let me translate that into a different situation. If, and I'm not, but if I was a cancer patient, I wouldn't necessarily want to talk about cancer all the time. Sometimes I would just want to be a regular guy, right? But if you're constantly talking to me about my cancer, then I will never be able to think about anything else. And so I translate that to the adoption situation, where if you're online sort of constantly posting photos and saying how glad you are to have an adoptee and all this, whatever it is, like, just don't overdo it, because the kid just wants to be a kid is kind of what I'm saying. They ultimately just want to have family. They want to have guidance. They just want to fit in. And if you're constantly saying you came to my family through an alternative means, you're going to accidentally alienate them in ways that you didn't even calculate. So just be a family. You don't have to overlaud the thing.
Yeah. Imagine facing an unexpected cancer diagnosis, losing your fertility at 33 years old, enduring the heartbreak of failed IVF and surrogacy attempts, and ultimately finding the strength to walk down the path of adoption. This is the incredible journey of our guest today, Kate Papkin. Kate, a resilient breast cancer survivor and a powerhouse in the real estate industry, lives in Northern Virginia with her husband, Sam, and their 3 wonderful children, Bradley, Connor, and Alexandra. What did you learn about yourselves?
I think we learned that there's no difference to us in how we parent these kids. And I think he thought it might feel different, or he might not love her the same, or how could it be the same? And we talk about it probably once a week when she does something silly or goofy or interacts with one of her brothers, and how much they love her, and how like the environment that you're in and the nurture aspect like really does matter. Like I understand there's there's biology and there's DNA, but to watch her continue to grow up and know like there's definitely our DNA, our fingerprint on that for sure. And it just, I mean, I don't know, just that you're capable of so much that like sometimes we look back in shock that like we went through all this, like, but we did, and it worked out exactly the way we wanted. But it really forced us to have a lot of conversations that initially we wouldn't have known to have.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, through all of this journey, and we'll talk a little bit more about the adoption journey, but what did you learn about your relationship with your husband?
That when we're on the same page, we can, accomplish anything, that it's truly a partnership, right? I mean, like, down to the home study, like, okay, you tackle these things, I'm going to tackle these things, because you have to constantly be pushing it forward. And that I can't imagine our family any other way now. I mean, I always say I want to adopt one more, and he says no. He said we're good.
We can do it on the side.
I know. I'll call you later. So yeah, just that. Just that. Like for something that seems so out of reach and so potentially impossible, especially the hurdles that kept coming. That we got there together. We're stronger because of it. And she has made our family better and our lives immensely better.
Today, we're joined by Tarcia Smith, a certified extreme hip hop instructor, wellness coach, and host of the Adoption Journey podcast. A Black adoptee raised by a Black family, Tarcia grew up in a predominantly white Florida community, navigating her unique identity with appreciation and curiosity. In a rare twist, Tarcia, on her own accord, asked her mom if she was adopted. This revelation from a closed adoption set her on a path of discovery, leading to a reunion with her birth family and a deep dive into the stigmas of adoption within the Black community. Whether you look like your family or not, adoptees usually experience some sort of trauma or identity issues or go ahead.
This is what it is for me. When you don't know what it is, number one, and you don't know to ask the questions, it's never talked about. How do you know you have it? And so good. Early on, because all those things were true for me, I would say no. As a matter of fact, I even said, now my birth mother, she's definitely got some trauma. And that still holds true. However, now that I understand more about what adoption trauma is and what that looks like, I can think about things in my own self. I'm like, oh, I've experienced that. And that's what that was. Clinginess, the abandonment issues, if you will, like breakups. I was like always needing to, I'm always going to have a boyfriend. And when I have a boyfriend, I love hard. Always been like that. And leaving, breaking up, whether it's friendships or boyfriends, I don't do well with that. It hurts a lot. And I just thought, and those are two very extreme things that I've dealt with. And I just thought, oh, this is just who you are. This is just what this is. I didn't know to link it back to my adoption because I didn't understand, because it was never talked. None of this kind of stuff was ever talked about in my house. And I think that's just a lack of what my parents know, because what you got to understand, this is a whole nother generation. I'm 49 years old. So this was 49 years ago. And they just did things very differently concerning adoption back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so talking to people, understanding, and then taking the time to do my own research and my own reading, I was like, oh, so that's what I have learned from one of the big things I've learned from doing this podcast and speaking to people. Yeah, I have it too. I think it just shows up differently in people. Some people have it,
absolutely,
and it plays out like really differently, and it's almost like tragic for them.
for sure.
And then there's other people like myself. Maybe you can call me, I'm functioning better in it, but I'm also older, wiser. I just look at life differently, handle life differently. And I think that's also why when the first time I tried to find anybody when I was 19, 20, it didn't happen. It wasn't time.
Welcome, Francine. I'm so excited to have you. Let's just jump right in.
It's kind of like you just want to address the elephant in the room a little bit, right? Like so many times, again, my children are older, but people don't know what to say. Most people would say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I didn't know your kids were adopted. Well, don't be sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about,
Right.
When I would say, oh, my kids, and I often would share like with their coach, with my kids' permission, as they got older and as they were younger, do you mind if I share with your coach that you were adopted? Because sometimes my kids were very open often about sharing their adoption story. And one of my biggest fears was I didn't want somebody to say, oh, stop, you were not. My kids happen to resemble my husband and I. Don't ask, but they do. And my biggest fear was for someone to shut them down and say, knock it off, and then they'd have to be like, no, So I often would share with coaches when they were little or teachers to say, and be ready because they may want to share their story. That's all. I think if we can bring the conversation to the table in a lighter way, raising families is heavy, can be heavy, whether you adopted your children or not. So can we lighten it up a little bit with some just basic terminology of educating people? So my hope is that even instead of saying, is that the real mother? Real mother, is that the birth? So what do they call it? Do your kids know that they're adopted? Like those kinds of things. So my hope is that when we can bring these conversations in casual way, we begin to reduce the stigma of like, oh, we can't talk about that because we don't know what to say. So you don't want to say the wrong things. You don't say anything. And sometimes that's the worst thing, that it's no right, wrong, or otherwise 50 plus years ago, that it was more fear-based and we don't want to talk about it. We want to pretend it didn't happen. I don't know what to say, so we're not going to say anything. And just how it's evolved to, yes, I was adopted. And it was a choice that somebody made. And this is my journey. And sometimes I want to talk about it and sometimes I don't. But yeah, there was the center of it in these stories is primarily love. And I have to believe that.
There's a lot that can go wrong in adoption. There are some journeys that are smooth sailing. First match, adoption happens in 2 days. No money lost, not a lot spent. Bada bing, bada boom, bada boom, bada bang, whatever that is. And it just happens. And others go through fall through after fall through after fall through, lose 10,000, another 5,000, another 4,000, apply for grants, doesn't get a grant, gets a grant, waits for 2 years, heartache, pain, loss of money, roller coaster up and down around the bend. Now, there are some people who take all of that in stride and know that it sucks and feels the pain, but doesn't let that lead any part of their journey. And there are other people who just can't hold it together as much, or just for whatever reason are not wired to think positively and always go to the negative. So who do you think has the easier time? And I do want to acknowledge, and I see the people who start positive, and after so much, people can only endure so much. And then they just start thinking negative about the world, right? About everything. But there are people who come into this already with so much loss and pain, with the idea of this isn't going to happen for me. I recently had a client, and this all goes with fear, right? So I recently had a client. I love these people, by the way. I'm not speaking ill will. I'm just speaking of things that have come up so that maybe you can take something from it. Who just matched. It's a long match. It's a perfect for them match. And when they found out they were chosen, the reaction was, that's awesome, even though I know it's going to fail. Ooh, whoa, just put the brakes on for a minute. How about just leave it at, that's awesome, we are excited for this journey. What you put out into the world, you manifest. I believe that. I am a little woo-woo. You probably know that about me already. I mean, I picked my affirmation card. I manifested the heck out of losing my job so I can do this full time. That's a story for another time. How you think, how you react, how you show up drives how difficult or easy or supported you feel throughout this journey. There are also people who hire us and think they're only working with us for one reason and one reason only, which is to help them match quickly. And don't take advantage of all of the resources that we provide. We have the best client community, bar none. I am sure of it. I don't know, but I feel that really strongly in my heart and my soul. They are so supportive. Hundreds of families that have walked through this. People don't take advantage of it. We have speakers every month that people aren't listening to. We have therapists every month that people don't take advantage of. These are all tools that can help you have an easier journey, have a more supported journey, not derail yourself and go down a rabbit hole, because it's harder to do when you're surrounded by people who have been through where you are walking and lift you up. So long story short, before you even know what's going to happen, do yourself the biggest favor in the world and do whatever you can. Before you even know what your journey is, start off on a positive note. Don't let people derail you. Don't let situations derail you. You're already starting this and going in. So anyways, do whatever it takes for you to be in a positive mindset. Think positive, no matter what happens in your journey. And if you do decide at any given point, I just can't take any more, this isn't for me, either decide I'm just going to take a break for a minute and pause so I can clear my head and understand what I need to do next, or stop the journey, but doing your best not to hold on to all that negativity and, yuck, so that you can move forward and feel good about it. Or continue your journey, ask for help, ask for resources. There are ways that you can continue going forward with support and love and resources to help you do so. So you have decisions to make along the way. I hope you enjoyed this special episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, would you do me a huge favor? Do me a solid. Before the end of the year, I'd be so grateful in this month of thanks if you would just take 2 minutes out to write up a little review on this podcast, what you like, anything. You can just say, great podcast, whatever you think. It would mean the world to me. The more 5-star reviews and ratings that I have, the more people get to hear the work that we put in to educate people about adoption. So would you please do that for me? Thank you so much, and have a great holiday season. Bye-bye.